and shape to our lives. Again, remaining attached to the outward form, the zahir of the sunnah, is comparatively easy, at least for the first generation of newcomers or of new Muslims. Remaining fully in a state of iman is a bit more difficult. And by iman, I don't mean primarily a formal assent to a set of doctrines. That belongs to the first pillar of Islam, and hence the first dimension of the faith as expressed in the hadith of Jibreel. By iman, I mean what the Arabic term actually implies, which is not belief, but a living, secure awareness of the existence and guiding presence of Allah. Adherence to ihsan is rarer still, and this is the heart of our problem here. Worship Allah as though you saw Him, and even if you do not see Him, He sees you. That's what the hadith says, and it's a very exalted station. But no matter how exalted it may be, it is actually indispensable. Because we're no longer surrounded here by social values which back home sustained our Islam and Iman in an untroubled way. In fact, it now seems that wherever we look and whatever we listen to, everything in our new environment, in college, at work, the media, seems calculated to challenge, to question, and to erode our Iman. Hence here, in the West, in America, ihsan, which in traditional Islam is a synonym for tasawwuf, is more obligatory, more indispensable for every Muslim than it is in the Islamic world. Society no longer supports our faith. The support has to come entirely from within, from a dynamic, luminous life of the spirit that immunizes us to the spiritual and then the moral and intellectual diseases of the air which we breathe. So far I've tried to make two basic points. Firstly, that while the fiqh is by its very nature multiple, spirituality offers a point of unity for Muslim communities. Secondly, the spiritual life is not an option, but it's absolutely necessary for us here. Without it, we're likely to run out of fuel. And this happens all too often in my experience to new Muslims who are carried along for a few months or a few years by the energy generated by their conversion, but who gradually flag and eventually drop out of sight. The world around them and the established mosques and organizations can't refuel them. The mosques can provide arguments about fiqh, about the sighting of the moon, about formal doctrine, but frequently they're not very good at providing spiritual nourishment. And hence, at last, these people die of starvation. Not just converts, but also second and third generation born Muslims. We're all aware of this problem. Because the zahir, the outward form of religion, is not rich enough to keep us going. And to keep us going is not ultimately its function. And those people who are sustained by the zahir and who have made the outer shell of the religion, the core of it, are often amongst the most disagreeable, the least impressive people, with a clear deficit in their own spiritual faculties and an ignorance of their own real needs. Sometimes I call this kind of neo-Islam of many of the official established Muslim organizations in the West decaffeinated Islam. It looks and smells like Islam. It may to the uninitiated even taste like Islam, but the essential stimulant is missing. How then do we acquire this stimulant, which will sustain our devotional lives and place us in a hopeful position when we die? The answer, of course, lies in the science of tasawwuf, in Sufism itself. Sufism is part of the Sunnah. It's the inward Sunnah. To claim that emulation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is complete when we follow only the outward forms of how the Prophet was sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to misunderstand Islam. It's to reduce Islam. It's a kind of dry Pharisaic formalism. The Sunnah demands to be followed on all of its levels. The Sunnah of practice, of Iman, and of spirituality. Obviously, just as we can never aspire to perfect emulation of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in his outward form, so too his spiritual uniqueness lies forever above and beyond us. And his specifically prophetic function and glory, again, is his alone. Nonetheless, Emulation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in an inner spiritual sense has been the serious undertaking of the awliya of this deen since its inception. In fact, that's true by definition. That's what a wali is. The awliya, well, obviously they can't be prophets, are his heirs, are his inheritors. A hadith tells us that the ulama are the inheritors of the prophets. They aren't prophets, but they emulate them and inherit many of their functions. Hence, for instance, an obvious case, the wali, the perfect saint, friend of Allah, can work miracles. Not mu'jizat, because those are the preserve of the prophets, but karamat. The awliya tend to conceal their karamat. The prophets, the anbiya, are obliged to make their mu'jizat public. So that's a difference. The awliya can also intercede at the judgment. Another way in which they are the heirs of the Prophet. So a famous hadith narrated by Imam at-Tirmidhi tells us, a man shall be told, arise so and so and intercede, and shall get up and exercise intercession, shafa'at, for his group or his family, or for one person or two, all in proportion to his works. Of course, the greatest intercession, ash-shafa'atul kubra, is the privilege only of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but the wali can inherit the Nabi in that he can exercise a lesser intercession. And the wali is also an heir to the Prophet in his, or quite often her, duties of guidance. Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهِ. Those who pledge their allegiance to you by making bay'ah are only making bay'ah of Allah. Very remarkable expression. Obedience to a sheikh is therefore part and parcel of the sunnah. Being a sheikh and accepting the onerous burden of carrying the problems and the direction of others is also part of the emulation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is described in the Quran as a mudhakkir, a reminder, an inculcator of dhikr, of remembrance, and that's also the function of the perfected wali who is called upon to guide others. One of the great Sufi poets of Islam, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, says, when you place your hand in the hand of the sheikh, the old man of wisdom who is knowing and venerable, who is heir to the Prophet in his own time, O disciple, so that within him the light of the Prophet shines, then you are present at Hudaybiyah, and you are a follower of those companions of the Prophet who swore their oath. Now, the wali experiences states, maqamat, which to us, ordinary people, are unimaginable and certainly hard to express in words. As-salatu mi'rajul mu'min, a hadith tells us. The salat is the mi'raj of the mu'min.